Hey, you can't be here. That's the first thing James heard when he stepped out his truck that morning. No, hello. No, good morning. Just those sharp, suspicious words cutting to the peaceful air. He looked up. A white woman stood across the dirt road, her arms folded, eyes filled with doubt. Behind her, a few more neighbors had stopped to stare. It wasn't what he was doing that bothered them. It was who he was. A black man, standing by the lake, unloading his camping gear. They didn't see a landowner. They didn't see a hard-working man who'd earned every acre of that ranch. They only saw his skin. James Carter, the county sheriff, was home, but that didn't matter to them. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend, a break from the noise of the city, a moment to fish at his late father's lake. He loved this place. It was more than land. It was memory, family, peace. But now, the stares were back, the same kind he'd known since childhood. Stares that said, "You don't belong here." The woman pulled out her phone, eyes fixed on James. "I'm calling the HOA," she said loudly, as if daring him to respond. James smiled softly, shaking his head. "Ma'am," he said gently, "you don't need to do that. This is my ranch." She frowned. "Your ranch?" she repeated, like the words were impossible to believe. "We'll see about that." Minutes later, the sound of police sirens broke the quiet air. 2 cars rolled up, dust flying behind them. James didn't move. He just stood there by the lake, coffee mug in hand, watching. The officers stepped out, tense and cautious, hands near their guns. "Sir, we got a report of a suspicious man camping on private property," one officer said. James looked at them for a long moment, calm but disappointed. "Suspicious," he repeated softly. "I guess that's one word for it." He reached for his wallet slowly, his eyes never leaving theirs. "Let's see what happens when you find out who I really am," he said quietly. Because today, ignorance was about to meet truth face to face. The 2 officers stood only a few feet away from James, their hands resting on their belts. One of them, the younger cop, looked nervous. The older one spoke first. "Sir, we need to see your ID." James nodded calmly. "Of course," he said. He slowly reached into his jacket, making sure every movement was visible. He knew how fast things would go wrong when you were black and misunderstood. The younger officer's hand tightened on his gun as James pulled out his wallet. The tension was thick enough to feel in the air. Behind the police cars, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors from a nearby community, some recording on their phones, others whispering. The same woman who'd called the cops crossed her arms, smirking slightly as if she had done the right thing. James handed over his ID silently. The older officer took it, gave it a quick glance, and frowned. He wasn't expecting what he saw. "Sheriff James Carter," he read out loud, almost in disbelief. The younger officer looked confused. "Wait, Sheriff." James gave a small, patient smile. "Yes, County Sheriff, and I own this entire ranch, including the lake you're standing on." The silence that followed was heavy. The woman's confident expression faded instantly. The crowd shifted awkwardly, unsure where to look. The younger officer took off his sunglasses, his face turning pale. "Sir, we didn't know," he stammered. James looked at him steadily. "You didn't ask," he said softly. "You just assumed." The older cop cleared his throat. "We were just responding to a call." "Yeah," James interrupted. "A call that never would have been made if I didn't look like this." He gestured toward his skin, not angrily, but with the tiredness of a man who had lived this moment too many times before. "You see a man fishing at his own lake and think it's strange? Why? Because he's black." No one answered. The woman lowered her eyes. The younger cop stepped back, ashamed. James took his ID back, pocketed it, and looked out over the lake. "This is what's wrong with the world," he said quietly. "People see color before they see character." He picked up his fishing rod again, his voice steady but cold. "Now," he said, "are we done here, officers?" But what happened next made everyone freeze in place. For a few seconds, no one said a word. The only sound was the soft ripple of the lake and the chirping of distant birds. But the silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt heavy, like guilt hanging in the air. The woman who had called the cops looked frozen, her phone still in her hand. Her confidence was gone. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought. James turned to her slowly. You thought what? He asked, his voice calm but sharp. That a black man sitting near a lake must be up to something? Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean any harm. James sighed, looking down at the ground. That's the problem, he said softly. People like you never mean harm, but you still cause it. The older officer cleared his throat, still embarrassed. Sheriff, we really apologize. We were just following the report. James looked at him and nodded slightly. I know, officer, but you didn't question that report. You didn't ask who owned the land. You came here ready for trouble because you believed the worst about me before you knew anything. The younger cop swallowed hard, realizing how quickly he had judged. His hand had been on his gun for a man who was simply fishing. James picked up a small stone from the ground and tossed it into the water. You know, he said quietly, I've worn this badge for 15 years. I've saved lives, stopped crimes, and helped people who looked nothing like me. But one day off, one peaceful morning at my own lake, and I'm still seen as a stranger. The crowd stayed silent. The woman's shoulder began to shake, not from fear, but from shame. I'm sorry, Sheriff Carter, she whispered. James gave her a long look. Don't be sorry to me, he said gently. Be sorry for your mindset. And make sure your kids grow up seeing more than skin color. He turned away, his voice calm but powerful. Racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers. He doesn't belong here. The officers nodded, humbled. One by one, the onlookers started to leave, quiet, thoughtful, changed. But for James, the moment wasn't over yet. Something inside him told him this story needed to be heard, not just witnessed. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in soft gold and pink. The officers had already left, but James stayed by the lake, his fishing rod untouched. He wasn't angry, just tired of always having to prove that he belonged. He sat down on a wooden log, staring at the reflection of the sky. The same woman who had called the cops was still there, standing awkwardly a few feet away. Her eyes were red from crying. Sheriff Carter, she said quietly, I don't know how to fix what I did. James looked at her, his voice steady but kind. You start by understanding why you did it. She hesitated. I was scared, she admitted. Scared of what? James asked. You saw a man with a fishing pole and a coffee mug. What made that scary? Her voice cracked. Because you were different. James nodded slowly. That's the truth most people don't like to say out loud. Fear isn't always about danger. Sometimes it's about difference. She wiped her tears, looking ashamed. I didn't realize how deep my bias was until today. James stood up, walking closer to her. You're not alone in that, he said softly. It's something our whole society needs to unlearn. It's in the way people look, talk, assume. But it can change if we choose to face it. The woman nodded, listening carefully. For the first time, she wasn't offending herself. She was truly hearing him. James looked out over the lake again. You know, he said, my father used to say that lakes are like people. You can't judge them from the surface. You have to look deep to see what's really there. The woman smiled faintly through her tears. He was a wise man. James said, he believed everyone could change if they were willing to listen. For a long moment, they both stood there quietly, the reflection of the sky dancing on the water. James didn't need revenge. What he wanted was awareness, and maybe, just maybe, a small change in one person's heart. But the next morning, something happened that even James didn't expect. The next morning, the sun rose softly over the ranch lake, turning the water into gold. James sat quietly by the shore again, coffee steaming in his hand. The world felt peaceful, but this time, it wasn't just the sound of nature that filled the air. There were voices, soft footsteps, and the sound of children laughing. When James turned, he saw a small group of people walking toward him, neighbors from the same community that had doubted him just a day before. The woman from yesterday was there too, holding the hands of her two little kids. In her other hand, she carried a basket of homemade muffins. "Good morning, Sheriff Carter," she said nervously. We want to come by." James smiled faintly. "Morning. What brings you all here?" She took a deep breath. "We wanted to apologize. For everything. For judging you, for assuming the worst." The little boy stepped forward, clutching a tiny fishing rod. "Mama said we can fish with you if it's okay." James looked at the boy, then at his mother. He felt something soften inside him. "Of course," he said gently. "There's room for everyone on this lake." They sat down together, the boy beside James, learning how to cast a line. Soon, more people joined, neighbors who had once whispered now bringing coffee, food, even fishing gear. The same place that had been filled with judgment just one day ago was now full of laughter and conversation. James looked around quietly. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Sometimes, change doesn't come from shouting or fighting. It comes from moments like this. Quiet, honest, human moments that open hearts. The woman glanced at him and said, "You know, Sheriff, yesterday I saw your skin before I saw your soul. Today, I see both." James smiled, looking out at the calm lake. "That's all I ever wanted," he said. "For people to see the man before the color." As the morning sun warmed the air, the sound of laughter echoed across the lake. What began as an act of hate had turned into a lesson of understanding, proof that one person's dignity could change an entire community. And from that day on, the lake wasn't just James Carter's ranch. It became a place where hearts learned to see beyond skin.